Good evening. Double game week 24, everybody. I've got my hot honey and lemon. That's how cool we are here. I'm joined by two of the handsomest FPL veterans you could possibly meet, Danny and Jossy. Let's start with our permanent man. Danny, how are you this evening, Danny?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. I think I'm over, just about over last week's debacle of the FPL. It's probably my worst week. Yeah, it was probably. I know. Let's not even talk about it. It's probably my worst week of the season in FPL. But these things happen. Obviously, the most annoying thing being Raya to Alisson, which obviously wasn't necessary. Well, it wasn't a necessary move, but it was for me. Well, it wasn't necessary, but I did it based on price changes and plan moves, and got completely screwed as usual.
Yeah, I blame all things this season on Enzo. Bloody Enzo, one way or another. I've been watching those price changes like eagle-eyed. He's 4.8 now. It's ruining everything.
Honestly, yeah. And obviously Rodgers is getting hat tricks in the again. That was a terrible move when I made the switch from Rodgers. But I did it. It wasn't that I thought Enzo was a better pick than Rodgers. I just did it on a period when I thought I was going to have to play Enzo every week, and they had really good fixtures for about 8 weeks, and obviously that didn't happen, and he's been terrible. So.
Terrible time. And another fellow, well, I suppose you probably weren't as upset at Gakpo, Jossy, but none of us here own him. So how are you this evening? Or actually, late evening for you, of course.
Yeah, very late evening, approaching 10 o'clock. No, I'm really well. I had a good week, actually. I had ummed and ahed about getting Gakpo myself. I wanted to move early because of the Ipswich fixture. Ended up going for Canate. And purely because I wanted to lock in the value to allow me to afford Bumo later, I made a premature move from Saw to Kluivert, who was supposed to just sit on the bench, and I decided to end up playing him. And that came in trumps for me. I did the maths on it, and the Gakpo move would have netted me 0-point difference, so exactly the same.
Wow, okay.
Now I realise Gakpo could still punish me next week because I did get a bit of regret that I haven't jumped on him, but it didn't work out too bad. Kluivert really came in trumps this week.
Nice. I mean, we could pretend that it was just a genius move. It was all about having Kluivert versus Nottingham Forest. The writing was on the wall. It was always going to be 5-0.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
Saw it coming. It was a one day that Murillo and Milenkovic were going to go missing and that sort of thing. I mean, actually, we talk about that game later on, but it did not play out. It didn't watch like a 5-0 game, but it will come to that a bit later on. And actually, you can probably tell from Jossy's lyrical tones that he's I've said resident scouser. I was trying to decide whether that you would consider that to be an acceptable thing to say. I don't know why. There was a little bit of me that went all sort of modern and wondered whether that was, whether I was sort of slighting anyone, but of course it's not. So he's the man who's the Merseyside expert for us. He's got the shirt, so that means you have to listen to him because we trust in fans, don't we, Danny?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, always
saying that.
And are you going to give Everton a fair crack of the whip this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be honest, I'm a Merseysider who I grew up with Everton and Liverpool dominating top flight football. Used to be Everton Liverpool FA Cup finals, Everton Liverpool fighting for the title. So I'd love not more than for Everton to be more successful than they are, as long as they're behind us.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's much danger of them getting ahead of you this season. Unless, of course, you want a bit of table bonus, you could go that way and target Everton for that. But we can talk about that a little bit later on. Welcome to anyone who is just tuning in, etc. Feel free to drop a encouraging message in the chat or a question or whatever it might be, or just I could say this now. There's that like button. Smash it. Even before you've heard anything interesting or good this evening, you could do that. Just if you're feeling generous and you're feeling sorry for me with the honey and lemon this evening. I have got a non-alcohol beer next to me as well, but let's just pretend that it's real and that I'm all manly. I'll take you through this evening anyway. We're going to start with obviously Liverpool and Everton will follow. A few other hot topics this evening. If you've got any that you'd like to chuck in the chat that you want discussed, we'll see if we can fit them in. There might be a little bit of a nod to Brentford and Bournemouth, and then we'll look at our teams and some questions a bit later on. But let's kick off, if I can, with Liverpool. So I suppose let's just do a kind of a round check-in of where we stand in our squads at the moment and whether we're happy with what we're going in with. Danny, do you want to tell us your 3 Liverpool going into this double game week? Obviously, you're entirely happy with your 3, I'm assuming.
I'm not unhappy with it. Obviously, I'm unhappy with how it started. I'm already fairly significantly down on it, so it's difficult to be happy about it at this point. But yeah, I've got Alisson, Trent, and Salah. Yep.
And Jossy?
I've got Salah, Trent, and Konate. And so minor regret that I didn't go for Gakpo last week, but I'm relatively comfortable with Konate. I do wonder whether we're going to get the clean sheets. I'm clinging on to the hope that Gakpo's a little bit less prolific away from home.
Yeah, he's going to be crazily leggy after his 52 or 3 minutes in the Netherlands. Long trip, difficult, bumpy ride all the way there. And I've got Trent, Salah, and of course the sexiest pick in the game, Alisson. We did that before, knowing that we wouldn't have a substitute keeper for game week 29, Danny. So that looks like it's an even better move now. For if we're planning to avoid free hit and so on forth. Well, let's go from left to right on this one on the image in front of us. How do we feel about the? I mean, obviously, chips are in contention this week. Are either of you considering assistant manager chip on slot? First of all, let's start with yourself, Jossy.
Personally, no. We touched on it. The double game week isn't the easiest. Bournemouth, we'll talk about in a little while. They're in great form at the moment, away from home. A derby is always a bit of a banana skin. If I was going to go for a Liverpool with no table bonus whatsoever, they need to be bankers where I'm looking at potential 4-0, 5-0 wins. So I just don't see it with Liverpool. Moisey, we're getting one bonus game against Liverpool. But again, I wouldn't have high hopes for that. You'd be relying then on them putting Leicester to the sword, and I don't really see that happening. There's a chance they don't even win against Leicester. So, yeah, for me, I don't see the upside in the AM chip, the Assman chip this week.
No, okay, that's letting down our episode title here, Jossy. So I'm not happy. No, thank you for your honesty. I mean, actually, it is an interesting point, isn't it? These 2 games, I think certainly Danny and I were going into last week and both picked up Alisson. You picked up Konate, and we thought over the kind of longer stretch, potentially if you wanted to carry them into the late 20s, and even potentially if you wanted to push your wild card a bit and go into the early 30s, quite sensible to have a defensive asset and that sort of thing. It looks to have blown up a little bit, but that Ipswich game was the one probably that we were both a little worried about. So it looks like it's come to fruition a little bit there. Danny, what are your thoughts on this one? Is it flickered across your mind for a minute to go with the assistant manager on slot?
Well, I've certainly considered going with the assistant manager this week. Probably less so on slot. It's really tough because there's lots of appealing things about going this week, whether you're going to go slot or Moyes. One of the main ones being just that there's so much going on at the end of the season in that period between kind of 29 and 36. There's 2 blanks, 2 doubles. There's going to be lots of transfers that you want to spend. Lots of fixtures. It's hard to even really speculate on what those doubles exactly look like yet. Some of them look okay. So none of them really stand out massively as assistant manager chip, actually, it's hard to get your head around. But then because it's not confirmed, you just sort of think, well, it's not really worth kind of processing it. But I think, so in a way, getting it out of the way now feels good. There's a lot of knowns at the moment. I mean, with Liverpool, as Jossy says, you don't really see a lot of goals. So goals is, goals counts. It's not so much about it being a banker as, you do get the extra points for goals as well. That makes it quite a big difference. I actually think I quite, low-key quite like the double for Liverpool. in terms of winning the games or even in terms of clean sheets, because I just think they're both difficult games. I quite like that, because you just think increased concentration, increased preparation. They know that Bournemouth have just battered Newcastle and Forest. I mean, it's ridiculous. So they know they're a serious team coming to them. And then there's a derby who, they're playing really well. So they're going to take, I know they take every game seriously, but they're going to take them really seriously. I think even with the kind of Europe trip midweek, obviously most of the first team players didn't go. Almost all of the first team players didn't go. And I think that's not just about a rest. It's also about the first team staying back and training together. And actually preparing in the tactics that they're going to play probably in these games, which is pretty significant. So I'm trying to be objective, and anything could happen. They could easily lose both games. They could lose one game, but I actually view both games that Liverpool will win them both, because they're so good. They're so good at controlling, and they're so good at cancelling out the sort of thing that Bournemouth are going to do and getting through Everton. But I think they're going to be quite tight games. And obviously there is that risk that they could lose one. So it doesn't really appeal to me from Liverpool, but actually I wouldn't mind it. But then at the same time, obviously the sacrifice of playing the assistant manager on in Liverpool means that you lose a Liverpool player, which is probably slightly more significant. And then with Everton, and I know we're going to talk about Everton, but I think we need to talk about these, both assistant managers together. It's also a difficult one, because it is quite appealing on paper, because they've got the Liverpool is the table bonus, but it's Liverpool away is about the worst table bonus you can get. It's probably made slightly better because it is a derby, and those games that they are less predictable. Crazy things happen in that derby. Leicester have just won, and Everton are playing very well. So yeah. I mean, what I think, again, this is linked, and I don't want to just jump ahead in conversation and don't want to talk too much. But the biggest thing about the assistant managership this week, which does have to be acknowledged at the same time, is the potential for the Spurs Fulham double. And this is where it gets really interesting, because I think if we knew there was a double, it's basically a no-brainer. I think you have to play your assistant managership, because it's 5 games. You should just find a way, mainly because that Fulham double in 25, obviously one of the games is against Forest, which is a table bonus game. It's a table bonus game, which is huge, but it's not just a table bonus game. It's a table bonus game that they're bookies' favourite to win. They're at home to Forest. They're fairly significant favourites to win that game. Significant enough, that's rare. So that's a really big appeal. And then they're playing Spurs, who they're probably going to beat anyway. Or you would have thought. I'd back them to beat Spurs at the moment. So it's 5 games. Now the problem with that is obviously the best we're going to get is a provisional announcement that double will happen, which is unlikely at the moment. So I'm sort of leaning towards actually disregarding it anyway, because I think you do need to be decisive. Because obviously, even if we get a provisional announcement, it still relies on Spurs actually beating Liverpool in the cup, which they are 1-0 up in. But I found that's at Anfield on Thursday night. So Anfield on Thursday night, when they've had good rest, because the game's on Saturday, and then the following game after that is a long while after. So they're going to take that game. They're going to be really prepared for that Spurs game. So obviously anything could happen. They could get a player sent off. But I don't think I would want to play the assistant manager chip on the basis, basically, putting a heavy bet on Liverpool actually losing that game. However, what is potentially interesting, actually, and I'd only really just thought about this today, and I haven't really heard it mentioned anywhere, is that what you could do, and this is the final thing I'm saying, I know I'm talking too long, but it's important to think about all these things, is I think it's very reasonable to play the Assman chip next week if it does get announced, if the double is on. Because, first of all, it means that you can go full on with this double. You can go, if you triple Liverpool, you can get 2 or 3 Everton, whatever you want to do, go all out. And obviously you can use the triple captainship as well. But by going the Assman next week, so that the first game is the Fulham double, what you're also doing there is saving a transfer in the first week, because you don't need to use the transfer when you first activate Assman. It doesn't use a transfer. So you get the manager for free, which means you've got a transfer if you want to get a Jimenez in, if you wanted to captain Jimenez, even if you wanted to take a hit and you get double Fulham. So in other words, it's actually quite, I'm open to that option as well, because you get a very appealing looking Assman chip next week if the Fulham is announced, but you still get the triple captain and all Liverpool and Everton players this week. But also the games following Fulham, again, I've not really looked closely at this because I was only thinking about it when I went for a quick walk before, but I think you've got like Arsenal at home to West Ham, which looks like a decent banker. or you've got Leicester with a table bonus game, and I think in 27 you've got things like Chelsea against Southampton. So it's actually a really nice run of fixtures. So I know I've just thrown loads together once, but I do think it's important to think about all the three. So that's where I am at the moment.
Yeah. First of all, welcome to a lot of people who've just joined us in the chat. If any of you are music specialists and could cut the bit where Danny said a very appealing Assman into some sort of funky house beat, then I would be very grateful. We could use it as a theme forevermore. Danny had a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. I'll come to Jossy in just a second. I've be interested when we come to teams later. I've gambled heavily on the idea that the Fulham Spurs game won't happen because I'll be hugely. I sold Jimenez first of all, so already that's the problem. But I would only have. Say again.
I've sold Robinson as well, so I'm doubly nervous.
Yeah, and I would only have one move going into next week, and that is very much pegged for a Bournemouth midfielder, hopefully. So, yeah, it is a tricky one. But again, this chip is maybe one of the ones that it's easier to validate taking a hit for if you were that into it. I'm not suggesting that it's a good idea, but it's a little bit more worthwhile if you are convinced. I'm just going to say one more thing before I hand over to Jossy and his thoughts on the kind of value of any chips at all this week, because I know that people have been mulling both over this week. But to point people who are concerned about Bournemouth away and Everton away, I would just point them back a couple of weeks to Brentford away, because I think people have forgotten that game is a good example of what Liverpool can do in these circumstances. It was 2-0, wasn't it, away to Brentford, and a really secure, professional kind of performance. I actually saw a clip today. One of you might have seen it as well, where Thomas Frank was doing the kind of a little bit of after game analysis with his support team and that sort of thing, and they were just saying, that during that game, Konate and Van Dijk and so on were just exceptional, and even though they managed to stop Liverpool's chances to a certain extent, it was still ultimately a 2-0 defeat. So I do think there is some value in just using that game as a bit of a template, because again, a good attacking team who get big chances, not wildly different from the Bournemouth scenario, perhaps. Jossy, do you want to extend on any of Danny's thoughts there about, and you can go on to talk about either chip this week and perhaps whether you are willing to deploy any in the next few weeks or this week?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, touching on what you just said about the Brentford game, you're absolutely right. It was a really professional performance, and I think what is key for us is now Konate's back. He makes a huge difference. He's really good. So that centre-back pairing of him and Van Dijk is really solid. So, yeah, I mean, every chance we can get the clean sheets we need. And we've missed him. We've missed Konate. I hadn't really contemplated. I mean, Danny, he touched on the potential for the Spurs double game week. And, yeah, I didn't talk about that myself. But I hadn't considered the idea of potentially playing Assman through from 25. If the double gets announced, that could be a really interesting alternative. But in terms of my own chip strategy this week, I'm fairly confident that I'm going to play triple captain. Looking forward to later in the season, we know we're going to get another couple of doubles. The 33 double might look quite attractive for a Salah. It's a Leicester fixture. Can't recall who the second one might be, Villa possibly, but all projected at this stage. But double with Leicester, obviously very, very attractive. But I just feel like Assman chip being such a powerful chip, the bench boost being a powerful chip, and in reality, the triple captain is probably the weakest of the chips. Salah's the best player in the league. He's having the season of his life. As you both touched on, the games are not as tough as people will make out. They're not easy. They're not going to be walkovers. But I see no reason why Salah can't get an attacking return in both. He's perfectly capable of getting multiple attacking returns. But if he was to pick up a goal in both games, a goal and assist, a couple of bonus in each game, more than happy with that for a triple captain. So I'm relatively comfortable. I'm not going to turn down this opportunity to get the triple captain out of the way and be able to watch a Liverpool double game week with Salah without stressing about every time he scores. I think back to, you'll remember the double game week that Liverpool had against Norwich and Leeds, I think. And I'd taken an alternative strategy that meant I was wildcarding that week. A bunch of us did in the community. So I'd wildcarded, so I didn't play the triple captain, and I thought it was going to pay off. And I think he went and plundered 5 goals, something across the 2 games, and it was a painful watch, particularly as a Liverpool fan. So I'm going to take the triple captaincy and just enjoy those 2 games. Hopefully, enjoy the points.
Yeah, actually, Jack Grealish is in the chat. I mean, it's probably the real one, I should think. He's taking a break from touching his hair to join us this evening. And he says that Triple Captain 24 is a lock. He's used his already, but assistant manager will be much more powerful later. It's interesting that I kind of think maybe this is a bit of a bum comparison now that last year was so painful for people. But Triple Captain this week feels a little bit like using a free hit during a blank game week. You know, it's that kind of scenario where you think surely it can't go wrong. You know, it's broadly the sort of plus points and that sort of thing. It's yeah. So that is a possibility, but who knows? Danny, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't, I obviously don't believe in jinx and all that sort of stuff. It's just a bit of fun. But what I keep saying to myself when I'm thinking about the Assman and the triple captain is the Assman can't get injured 5 minutes into the game. And it's like, there could be some painful swings ahead. Obviously that classically happened to all Mane triple captains, didn't it, about 3 years ago? Yeah. Go on, Jossy.
I just also want to say we haven't touched on it yet, and I think it's been said already. But what's unique about this double game week is that we normally go into 2 games in the space of 3 days, and that nervousness of whether Salah will get 60 minutes in the first one, or he might not start the second. Now, with Salah, that's less of a risk, but this is a double game week where they're going to go into the second tie on the back of a Plymouth tie, where they're all going to rest, and they're going to come in fresh, probably all play 80, 90, the key assets will. So quite a unique double game week in that respect.
The other thing, in terms of like contrasting the 2 chips, and it's an interesting sort of thing to think about, but again, logically, I mean, when you think about the difference between now, in terms of the season in general, versus the end of the season in general, they're quite big differences, and that potentially work differently for the 2 chips. So, for example, triple captain, I would rather, again, on paper, play it now at a time when everyone's still playing for something. Every game is really serious. Bournemouth is a really tough game. Everton is a really tough game. The outcome of the league has not been decided. It's all really tense, concentrated, focused. Champions League is out of the way. So that ticks a lot of boxes for something like the triple captain, whereby you should know who's going to play. You should know how they're going to approach the game. And that really helps in terms of the triple captain. And obviously, in terms of the Assman chip, that's slightly different. So if you're playing that now, the same things apply. So you would expect the teams that are expected to win, which doesn't really work in favour of the bonus table and so on, unless there's this rare instance which is appealing about Fulham, because actually Fulham are just way lower than they should be, and that's why that's a table bonus game that they've got in 25. But obviously at the end of the season things change a lot, and suddenly you know a lot about which teams do have something to play for and which don't. And you first of all, you can do 2 things with that. You can be more confident potentially about the table bonus games and who to back. First of all, and you also have more control over your risk and how you want to use that chip, because obviously you're going to know your position, your rank, whether you need to Hail Mary it, whether you need to go for table bonus, whether it's worth it, whether you want to get or whether you're already top 1k or top 10k and you want to play safe. So first of all, you get more control over your risk. And second of all, the end of the season, I think, plays into the hands a little bit more of the bonus table dynamic of the chip. If you think back to last season, the last game of last season, I know people have talked about this, sort of reference this. I don't know how many points it is because I can't bother. I don't even know how the point system works exactly yet. I can't remember. But Palace beat Villa on the last game of the season 5-0. And that was a table bonus game. It would have got you like 30 points or whatever, something stupid or less. But But actually, if you remember, we all had Triple Palace. We were all bringing in Mateta. I didn't, famously, which cost me about 30 bloody K places, which was so annoying. Cost me a top 10K again. But we went into that game all fairly confident that Palace were going to win. And that's because of, Villa were playing in different, Villa were knackered, the table had been sort of decided, whatever it was, the cups had been played. And that's huge. There's a potential for those sort of games where you've got more knowledge. You know what I mean? Whereas the triple captain at the end of the season is very different, because obviously Liverpool could be in the Champions League semi-final, they could be in the final. Whoever it is you want to play it on could have all these other things going on. There could be more rotation. The league might be won, it might not be won. So I like the knowns of now in terms of the triple captain, and actually quite like the unknowns or more of the knowns in relation to table bonus and teams on the beach and teams not on the beach in relation to the Assman later.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly on that Aston Villa fixture, you just reminded me of it, because I'm pretty sure everyone had a choice between two midfielders and I went for the wrong one. I think I got Elise and everyone else went Eze and that type of thing. But if you remember, that game was one of those ones where everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Villa." The pictures of Villa players drinking midweek because they'd qualified for the Champions League or something. Do you remember? And McGinn, I think, was a good example. Is completely off his face, and everyone was like, none of these people are going to be able to turn up for training or whatever. So it's, as you say, there's going to be an opportunity like that that you just can't really account for right now. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's the kind of period I'm likely to use it, and therefore likely bench boost will probably come in that kind of 33 period, something along those lines. But pretty keen to avoid using it anytime soon. It's not on the agenda for now, anyway. Jossy, just quickly on players before we go on and have a look at Everton in a few minutes' time. I'll just reel off a couple of stats, because I know Danny gets excited when I go into sort of professional mode. But if we look at last four, just so that we're up on the in the relevant recent matches, so Liverpool's XGC 2.5, a little over 2.5 for the last 4 games, so that's looking pretty solid. Salah is out on top for XGI at 3.14, but Gakpo's closed the gap now. He's 2.99, which is a little bit worrying for all of us here. Trent's still very good at 1.94. And then we've got a little bit of a gap off between those and the next ones, but Szoboszlai is actually above DS. Jossy, would you recommend? Are there any punts that you actually don't mind? I know that you've gone for boring defenders, but if you were being exciting and you didn't care anymore and you just wanted to live for the thrills, is there anyone that you could recommend?
Look, I'd love to be exciting, but
wouldn't we all?
Look, Szoboszlai could do a job. He could really. I mean, he does seem to be more involved at the moment. He can always pop up with a goal. But unless you're really struggling for budget, I just feel like you're taking unnecessary risks. Diaz, I know a lot of people still probably holding Diaz. He hasn't been as involved lately. I think I'd probably hold him if I had him. You look like you were going to say something there, Richie. I personally, I think the assets are clear. Yeah, I think Salah and Trent are no-brainers. If you haven't got the money to get Trent or you've already got VVD, that's fine. But then I do think you want to add another centre-back or Gakpo. And realistically, I probably wouldn't be looking at Alisson now. But
how dare you?
But honestly, no. To be honest, I mean, I clearly was looking at Alisson myself. He for the solidity of minutes, but I think Gakpo gives me enough assurance that he'll play now. One of the regrets I had when I initially bought Konate, was the rumours then came out about how he was playing through pain, he was having injections, and that was really worrying. But Slot kind of said that he can now play 3 games in a week, and there's plenty of opportunity to rest in these midweek games. So yeah, I think Konate is fairly safe for minutes as well, as safe as he can be. So to answer your question, I think outside of the players that we're all talking about, I think it's very risky to punt on a Szoboszlai, personally.
Yeah. Okay. That's you've it's pretty convincing as far as I'm concerned. No, I won't be touching those. We just actually final question on this, and this is for you both. But there is those who are profligate with transfers and have stacked up perhaps 2 or 3 and don't mind this. Would you feel convinced enough to swap Liverpool positions around? A few people have looked at that this week. I mean, it's not something I would do probably myself, but if someone was in a situation where they could free something up, move Diaz to Gakpo, perhaps use the right make weights, get in a Bournemouth midfielder early, that type of thing, would either of you validate that?
If Diaz could go to Bumo and I could get Gakpo, absolutely. I think I'll do that move. Would I do it for a Bournemouth mid this week? I mean, part of that depends. You have to play the Bournemouth mid. I wouldn't be totally against it because I do think Gakpo is a lot more involved than Diaz, but only if you've got 3-4 transfers being a hole in your pocket. What do you think, Danny?
I don't massively disagree. I don't hate it. I just think these games are quite different to what we've seen in the last few weeks, and I just think that means that we could see different kind of setups, and we could see different people profiting from their approach that they're going to have. And I just don't really know exactly what that's going to look like. And I think we could see Darwin get some minutes, and obviously Diaz didn't travel to Europe, and it could be that Diaz gets some minutes on the left, because I know that Gakpo's been great, and I think Gakpo is good pressing, and I think he is the first choice. But Diaz is very good at pressing. He's very good at kind of being positionally kind of strict on that left-hand side when he does play there. And the other thing to factor in with that is I think that Diaz, obviously Gakpo's ownership is going to be really high and Diaz is going to be low. So Diaz is going to have an appealingly low ownership, and he's also a midfielder who gets the extra points for the goal and the clean sheet. So I kind of agree that if I was making a bet, I would bet on Gakpo, kind of being the one to be more involved or to get maybe get more points if I was forced to bet. But actually, I like making the bet of Diaz if I already have him, I think. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely the same. I don't think there's almost any circumstance in which you would have enough stacked transfers to validate that this week, because I think the other thing, as I said earlier on, probably not the week ideally to get to Bournemouth. I don't really see how you would also use that switch swap. It's unlikely that spot would be the one that you would turn into Mbeumo anyway. So yeah, I don't really like. I think if you're in that situation, you may as well take the bet, because what's the difference between them? Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a game at the most. Attacking threat is not a huge difference. I don't see why you would change that personally. There's a few Everton kind of comments creeping into the chat, so we hear you. We'll go to Old Man Moyes. So obviously, am I fond of him? It's quite hard to explain West Ham fans' feelings towards David Moyes, but it was in theory the right time to move on from him. But of course, it went horribly wrong after that, and the media love to talk about that, don't they? So, but we'll go on to that. Actually, Colm Bugler has started. This isn't the way I wanted to start this conversation, but he's talked about Decore as a punt for the double game week, and of course, Jossy, I've noticed that you've got Beto in your draft team. That we're in a league together, so it's quite exciting. The opportunities are there.
Yeah,
this week.
My strike force in the draft was so desperate a couple of weeks ago. I spotted them in the free agent, so I picked him up. He may well get something.
Oh, you may. Yeah, you got to start him this week, haven't you? On that, there is some hot off the news, press news today as well. Njai was pictured in training, which is a relief to myself, who did 3 moves early this week at tremendous personal risk, which is about as exciting as I get here. I suppose again we should go left to right. Danny, you were more warm to the idea of Moyes. Was there anything more you wanted to say there, or I mean, to kind of support his position, the changes that he's made? Do you like the idea of backing him for him, or is it more of a strategy going into the next few weeks if you were using that chip?
Sorry, I've got something in my head that I just want to get off. I just want to get something in my head out of my head really quickly about Liverpool. And we will go back straight to Everton. I just feel like it's what I want to say. I'm talking about the defence and Jossy very quickly. But Liverpool's defence, I just want to say, going into the double and why I do feel confident. It's not actually being talked about enough just how good these players are. And like Konate is so important, right? But Van Dijk needs to be applauded and just lauded more than he is right now. He is a joke of a defender. He is just one of the best ever lived, and he's just the best in the world by far. And I think Pickford, we'll talk about Pickford and Everton. Pickford probably took 2 years out of his career, which even as I'm not even a Liverpool fan, and it angers me. But that combination of Alisson, who's the best keeper in the world, Van Dijk, who's the best centre back in the world, and one of the best we've ever seen, and then Konate, who's absolutely brilliant, and then Gravenberch in front of them is just so good. It's ridiculous, and you've got to feel good about them getting clean sheets in any game. So I just wanted to say that, and also that one of the reasons I think it's great that you got Konate. The only reason I didn't get Konate was I'm worried about his injury, and he strikes me, his injury record, and he just strikes me as one of these people who he's just such a big. He's an amazing player. He's great, and I hope he stays fit for Alisson's sake. But he's a big, clunky, it's like his bones don't quite fit his body. And I always always reminds me of that guy from Men in Black, the bug in Men in Black when he first comes down and takes that human's body. I'm not saying that's Konate, but I always think of that when I think of anyone who just they just look like the bones not quite right and they could just get injured any moment. So I always worry about Konate. But I just wanted to say that quickly, that it has to be said that their defence is ridiculous. So I am feeling good moving forward. Go on.
Good. Well, I know we all agree, of course, on that score, but it is well said, and kudos on quite an unusual cultural reference there. I didn't see us going down a Men in Black.
Yeah, it's just where I go, and I'll think of some other players, I'm sure. The bug, but yeah, Everton. God, it's such a funny one, Moyes, isn't he? Because 1 minute, people, you get half of these fans saying, "Oh, he plays really attacking football, and he's going to bring it back." And then, the game they had against Brighton, the manager's coming out afterwards, and he's just like, "Oh, we lost the game because they didn't let us play football. They just played anti-football, basically." I didn't actually see that game, so I'm not going to comment too much. But obviously, there's just a feel-good factor. We said it last week, didn't we? There's definitely a feel-good factor. They're definitely organised. They're definitely doing the right things. They look solid defensively. They've got good players fit. So you fancy them to beat Leicester, but I didn't see Leicester, and they beat Spurs away. So which is anything could happen there. So I think for me with Everton, I just want a piece of the defence because you just don't know. They could easily get one clean. They could do anything. So I definitely want a piece of defence. I probably wish I did have Pickford now, obviously, especially with Fabianski being dropped in relation to Alisson. Really annoying. So just got to swallow it now. We'll see how that comes. But just a couple of things I'm thinking, I suppose, is you mentioned in the chat Doucouré. I don't mind Doucouré at all because it doesn't mean moving too many crucial pieces around. A lot of people have maybe 4 midfielders that they don't want to sell and bring a Doucouré in as a fifth, and then you can sell him for a Bournemouth midfielder next week is easy. And I like players like Doucouré because he's going to play both games. He's going to get really good minutes in both games. And he's one of these sort of aggressive sort of form type players who responds to managers, and sometimes it just clicks for him under the right managers, and it wouldn't surprise me if it just clicks all of a sudden for him. We've got 180 minutes to click here with 2 decent fixtures, and he's one of these players who plays in the 10 and he's really aggressive and pushes forward and takes shots. So don't mind that at all. The interesting one is obviously Beto versus Njai, because take for example as a reference point, Review has Beto slightly ahead of Njai this week, but I mean very, very close. It's like 7.4 to 7.3 or something more. So it's ridiculous. But just as a reference point to begin with, Review really likes Beto, and you can see why, because the type of chances that Everton typically create and the type of chances that Moyes creates. So we said it about Calvert-Lewin last week. Is he's getting the ball in the box. He's got a big man. It's getting it on his head. It's set pieces. It's that number 9 sort of stays in that number 9 position, winning the ball high up the pitch, laying it off to other people. Beto's a big bastard. He's like, what is he? Must be about 6'4" at least. And he's got a place to fight for. Obviously, the worry with Beto is that they are looking for a striker, so it's a risk. He might not even play the second game. That's the obvious risk. I would suggest it's unlikely they're going to find a striker they can replace Beto with straight away in the double. So don't mind it too much if you wanted to go there. And then Njai is a really interesting one to me at the moment because obviously I'll probably get him. I've held out just for now because I could afford a 1 or 2 little price. And you've obviously just told me that he was in training, which is good. So I just think it's really interesting with Njai. Again, these are just intangibles and stuff, and some people might think it's silly, but Njai's always had the baseline of being an absolute baller. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant player. So he's always ticked that box. He's an incredible footballer. My dad's a season ticket holder at Sheffield United. Sheffield United fans will say my dad says he's one of the best players who's ever played for Sheffield United. Brilliant feet, class player. And obviously he's now got penalties and he seems to be good at penalties. So there's 2 really big boxes ticked. But now there's a sort of additional thing where to me he's always been this guy who's like quite quiet and he just plays really good football and does his job, and then you don't ever hear from him and see him, and he just goes back to the dressing room. Well, suddenly when Moyes took over, I said last week, didn't I, that he came out and said, quite damningly in terms of Dyche, we all know what we're doing now and we're all happy. And I was like, Jesus, that's a pretty big thing to say, and it's also a pretty ballsy thing to say. Then you've got him scoring the penalty, and he's going up to the Brighton fans, giving it the seagull and all that, and he's getting booked. And then actually, I hadn't watched Match of the Day until only yesterday because I thought I sort of seen all that I needed to see, and again, this doesn't really mean anything, but I just like to see it for myself because after the game, he was actually one who was really leading the celebrations and sort of like telling everyone that they'd done well and giving it, the real big. And I just saw this different side to Njai. So now I'm like, hang on a minute, this guy's really up for it. And all of a sudden he looks like the main man. He's actually telling people what to do. And I just nudged it up a couple little percentage points for me, where if I was thinking about Beto, I'm like, actually, no, Njai is more than just this quiet baller than I thought he was right now. So I'll have a piece of that is the way I'm thinking.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things on that. Quite interesting. So I've already got him, so but we can talk about him in a little bit. But I agree with you. I think I'd quite like to know whether there is an impact of Beto instead of DCL on Njai, because obviously you tend to think that Calvert-Lewin's hold-up players, a fair bit stronger. He's decent short passes in the box, that type of thing. Beto, I don't know whether you've looked at this, Danny, but I know that some of the algorithm sites, etc., have Beto on a fair pen share, which seems pretty unlikely to me. I think Review, for example, has him. I can't remember what it is, so someone can go into chat and check perhaps. But it's definitely
25%.
25%.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, which and it seems to me that it's
20, yeah, 20, and then goes up slightly.
Yeah. Very likely. But yeah, so I tend to agree. It's actually just a little quick fun guessing game for those in the chat and those here as well. If you want to guess Decore's XGI over the last 4, that would be quite an amusing thing to go for. If anyone wants to throw anything out there, please do. Joss, did you have a view on this one?
Decore's XG per 90.
No, over the last 4 XGI.
0.7.
Jack Grealish, who's here in the chat, is going for 0.2. Colm Bugler is a fierce skeptic. He's a 0.03. Danny, finish this off.
Oh God, I wish I'd seen more of Everton so I could have a reasonable guess. But I imagine it is low because I haven't seen him come into that sort of thing that I've talked about recently. So I'll just say 0.24.
It's pretty good actually. It's 0.33. So, but the reason I mention it is because I wouldn't actually be that put off those stats. I know that's obviously on face value it looks terrible, but he does strike me as that you can't get warning with Decore. You don't get warning, do you? He either does, and then suddenly he looks like a fierce, aggressing number 10 who can occasionally run on. And he might do with Beto. We don't know because there's not much of a sample to have watched Beto with and that sort of thing. So 0.33, but if it is literally for a week and you're turning it into, Utara Cliver, etc., then that's absolutely fine. The reason why I've gone Ndiaye was quite a specific set of situations. I think if I was João Pedro or Wood or that sort of thing, maybe I'd be a little bit more reticent. But I had Jimenez away at Newcastle. I was going to move him on anyway, and he can potentially sit on the bench from here thereafter. So it's perfectly fine for me. And Danny, I agree with you. I watched the Everton extended highlights, and that's the reason why I wasn't worried about the injury fear that much either, because he walked off as though he was just a little tired. You could kind of tell the difference between when someone's got a little knock or is tired and they were genuinely injured and that sort of thing. And he was walking around in the celebrations, as you say, arm over people's shoulders, genuinely kind of really chatty, starting to grow up into a proper... Sorry, I'm going to react to that comment in the chat in just a minute. But that's those are good signs. Goran Eliasson, no, the weightlifting pod is not coming. I'm it's still very early days. We're talking about very small weights in front of the telly in the evening. It was really nothing to write home about. I mean, you can probably tell this is not, you're not in it for that kind of viewing, I'm afraid. Yes, Jack Grealish, those stats are absolutely horrific. I mean, if you are interested in them, so Calvert-Lewin was at the top, 1.47, and Ndiaye was just behind 1.39. I should say that includes a penalty. So just to worry you a little bit more, possibly. But I think it's a viable one, especially if you're not looking to kind of play too often. The defence, though, I think that's where you've gone, Jossy.
Yes, yeah, I picked up Pickford just this week, just before he rose in price. I'm not averse to getting somebody in before he goes up in price. I'm a fan of Pickford. I think he's it goes without saying he's second top scorer in the league anyway, despite the fact Everton have been desperate for most of the season. He is a keeper who can chip in with saves, can chip in with a pen save. And yeah, the Leicester fixture is good. Gives us a good fixture in 29 as well. Fairly decent. The West Ham at home. I haven't gone elsewhere. I strongly considered Ndiaye. I've got Pedro stinking out my team. It's been desperate. It surprised me that you said you would be a little bit more relaxed about Ndiaye if you had Pedro in your team, but Pedro's not filling me with confidence. But yeah, I just came to the decision that it would just be another striker stinking out my bench moving forward, and the transfers are quite precious now. So I've taken a call that I'm happy with one slice of the Everton defence, a goalkeeper who I think's perfectly playable until a wild card. I do have Henderson as a backup as well, so I can rotate them as it suits. So I think I think the Everton defence is absolutely a good punt this week for the double game week. I think the big challenge with Everton is we know they haven't been great, but we've got a really small sample size of David Moyes, and they do seem to have picked up, but it's a really small sample size. We don't know an awful lot of how they're going to approach these games. We've seen a little bit of them trying to be a bit more expansive, but as Danny said, against Brighton, they apparently were very tight, shut up shop a little bit. Perhaps that's what that'll be their approach away from home. These are two home fixtures, so you would think they would go for it a little bit, certainly against Leicester. I'm sure he's going to... It's the last derby at Goodison. So Moyes, he's a blue boy through and through, to be honest. He spent a good time there. So he will know the importance of getting a good result there for the Everton fans. So they'll make it hard for us. So I don't know what that means, whether that means he tries to keep it really solid or whether he really tries to give us a game. I imagine he'd probably try and keep it solid, personally. But I think the defence could do well this week.
Yeah, No, I think Pickford's an excellent pickup. I would say if I'd waited a week longer, he would absolutely be have been a transfer in this week without doubt. To be honest, one quick thing I just wanted to address actually before I hand over to Danny on any final Everton comments. Is just about, because actually what's interesting is we're very glad that Jossy was on with us this evening, but we weren't sure whether we were going to be on this evening with Jossy or Pep, and actually Pep, our friend Stu, he, by the way, has chosen an early bird dinner at the Toby Carvery above us, which I know that other pods have this problem as well. Black Box probably have the same problem, above average as well. But the idea of eating dinner with parents at a £5 a head at a Toby Carvery was too good to pass up. Anyway, the point I mentioned this for is because he's only got 2 double game weekers. He's not even sure he wants a third Liverpool. And he definitely doesn't want any Everton. And what's quite interesting about this week, I think, is that there are some people who have turned their nose up at the idea of an Everton player or using a transfer on it at all. And I can kind of see the argument for it, but equally, the attitude I took was that in a sense, it's a little bit of a free throw of the dice for me in a couple of positions, because I needed the money anyway. I've got 5 really good defenders, so it wasn't a big problem to downgrade to a Mikalenko. That saved me, $500,000 or something. And then Njai, again, was a spot that I wasn't really comfortable with anyway, Raul Jimenez. And I kind of see it as a little bit of a free roll, because I'm not particularly going to need them going forward anyway until 29 anyway. So that's the kind of way I view it. Danny, any last thoughts on Everton? And perhaps you think my approach there is ridiculous?
No, not at all. No, I do have Pedro, and I'm probably going to do Pedro to Njai. I keep forgetting that it's the last derby, and Jossy's just mentioned it, and I'd forgotten again. And it is interesting because it's like, what, I just don't know how he's going to, because he's not. You wouldn't have thought he's going to want the last derby to be an anti-football approach, but then he's not going to want the last derby to be a 5-0 hammering. And if he doesn't take an anti-football approach, is he resigning himself to a 5-0 hammering? So that's actually really hard to think. I mean, actually how that's going to look. I would think that they're going to come out for the first 10 to 20 at least and see if they can get a goal and rate and give the crowd a game and see where it takes them. So that could be interesting in terms of first 10 to 20. I also just keep forgetting this, not keep forgetting, I'm just thinking now, in terms of the double game week in general, we've got a lot of our own players playing against a lot of our own keepers, haven't we, in terms of penalty takers? So it could be interesting. We've got Njai potentially taking penalties against Alisson. We've got Salah potentially taking penalties against Pickford. We've got Kluivert potentially taking penalties against Alisson. We've got a lot of scenarios where we could be watching a penalty and just hoping that they get it on target at least, so that you either get a goal or a penalty save. So it's could be fun or horrible. Could be the last pod we ever do. I don't know. I might be driving to a cliff in Lyme Park nearby. Who knows?
Danny, that would be a nightmare for me. I would have to book alternative guests, etc. So if you could not do it for that reason alone, unless Jossy, you fancy becoming a regular, in which case it's absolutely fine.
It depends if I get the offer of the Toby Carvery.
I can throw. Well, actually, a £5 a head. I think I probably can. Actually, there you go. Doesn't fit in with my very selective health regime, as Danny knows, but there you go. Actually, just final point actually on this, Danny. I'm confused. James Tarkowski, the titanium grizzly bear. Why is he not in your team?
I know. I've not even mentioned him because once he's not going to be there, I've had to completely disregard and pretend he doesn't exist. That could be painful. Yeah, I still got a good feeling about Tarkowski. You have to. Yeah, he's going to get some shots in this double game week, and. Yeah, we need that picture. Did you see him in that match of the day interview? He's like, not only does he look like a grizzly bear, but wow, those ears. It's quite something, isn't it? He makes Gary Lineker look like he's got a good set of ears. Yeah, what a guy.
Before we move on, actually, I'll deal with this question now because a few people have asked it. Would you do Raya to Pickford? And there's a couple of scenarios here. If you were on free hit 29, and then another if you were just looking at game week 24 to 28. So, do we think it's worth the transfer? What do you reckon, Danny?
if it's getting you, well, I was going to say if it's getting you money, but it's not that big a price difference. I mean, if it facilitates something, it could be okay. I think I'd probably try and look elsewhere now. I mean, I've really hated Raya, obviously, but you know, you've sold him. I've sold him. We've sold him at the perfect time. And another reason why I sold Raya was because I didn't think Saliba was fit. And then people said, "Oh yeah, we thought he was fit. Was trying." I didn't see that. I didn't see that he was training and stuff. And then Saliba suddenly appears. Arsenal have always been good defensively, but now they've got a couple of clean sheets and Saliba is fit. They're grinding out some games, and they've had to. You know, as soon as they got that red card, I knew they weren't going to concede because you knew they were just going to. It was just going to up the concentration and everyone get behind the ball, sort of stuff. I just think Arsenal have got some really good fixtures coming up. And so ideally, I probably wouldn't want to play around with it if I could go somewhere else. If I could go to Tarkowski or Mikolenko, if you're looking to double up, I probably would do that. I mean, Pickford's a good pick. I've got no problem with Pickford, but I think I'd rather have Raya probably over the next 5-6 weeks.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. I think we'll move on. So, of course, there are other exciting things going on in the background this week. It doesn't all need to be double game week fever, etc. So the chaps on the screen, for those who are listening, we got Dango Utara, and then we've got the Brentford duo of Mbeumo and Wissa. Dan, is he already coming for you? I couldn't wait, as you know. I just got very excited. And Brian's back.
Oh, Brian. Oh, Brian. No, he's not in yet, but he will be. I need to look at it, actually. You might need to remind me later. Because he might be rising in price tonight, mightn't he?
Let's have a little peek.
He will be.
Yeah.
I've got my eye on him.
Oh, Jossy, no. I should have asked Jossy. Yeah, I'm going to... I mean, the other thing, another reason it's quite important why I wanted to wait was it was because obviously United are playing tonight, so I wanted to get through Bruno playing. Because I'm planning to sell Eze for Mbeumo, but obviously you never know. So if something happens to Bruno Fernandes tonight, then I'll be selling him instead. We'll get to teams, and obviously I might even sell Bruno next week anyway. It's definitely one of my options to just sell them both. But yeah, Brian will be coming in tonight. It's likely for Eze, but could be for Bruno if something happens.
There we go. We'll come to your views on Atara in just a minute, and so on. Jossy, are you eyeing up any Brentford as well? Because this is a good week to get on. I know a few people have mentioned that Spurs have 1 or 2 players back, but so what, really? Yeah.
So I had spied last week that if I'd have ignored Pickford, I could have brought Wissa in this week for Pedro, and I'd have had exact cash left in the back pocket to get Mbeumo the following week. But Wissa rose in price just before deadline, so off the table. But I do still like the idea of that double up. So my intention at the moment, as a spoiler alert, I'm also thinking about bringing Mbeumo in this week, and I'll do it at the expense of Bruno, which is going to give me some funds to play with. I can maybe potentially bring Wissa in next week. So yeah, I'm keen. I think Mbeumo's going to become very, very well owned across the active playership. So I think having 2 would be really useful to go and get some benefit out of those Brentford goals, because it is a nice run of fixtures. A slight concern about the returning Spurs centre backs, but I think even before the injuries, Spurs were a team that could be got at. So yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting on the Wissa point. Actually, it's just worth people having a look at. I mean, I won't spend too much time on it now, but if we very quickly just put the fixtures up there, you do notice that Brentford's fixtures do sort of drop off again after the blank. I know it's quite hard to see there, but I'll just, if I can just focus a little bit better. So they've got Newcastle and Chelsea after the 29. So there's a little bit of a drop off for those who are interested in doubling up. So possibly short term, some might say, but of course they're good in pretty much any game, aren't they? In any case, I'm hoping that Brentford, I'm sure they will, but Brentford hold out against the advances of Nottingham Forest and Spurs as well. I mean, I don't really get it. I mean, from Wissa's point of view, as I said, Brentford's ground is right round the corner from Kew Gardens. Ealing's got a lovely new cinema complex on the other side. And I've been to Tottenham. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Danny, what are your thoughts? Brentford, you're quite keen on them. Are you still of the view? I know that we're both quite similar. I still get the impression that they're both a little underrated in a weird kind of way. The people don't quite seem to appreciate how outrageously efficient, especially in Mbeumo is, and the quality of chances that Wissa picks up. So is that something that you still feel going into these good games?
Yeah, I mean, Mbeumo's definitely underrated as a footballer. It frustrates me, and it's just always, first impressions are so difficult to change. So people have, it took Mbeumo a long time to get to this player that he is now. So people have spent years molding an impression psychologically, we all do as humans, of what we see a player as being, and it's very difficult to sort of move far away from that. And I've been saying for weeks now on here, but also, he's one of the best players in the league. Easily, he would walk into pretty much any team for me. I said previously, I think something like Arsenal, maybe he wouldn't if he needs to play on the right, just because Saka. He's a Saka type player to me. He's actually right up there, even with a player like that. So he's a ridiculously good player. Never seems to make a mistake. So calm. He's like he sees things in slow motion. He's fast. He's got a finish. He can dribble. He makes all the right passes. He defends well. He plays for the team. He's just a joke. Mbeumo is a joke of a player. I wish United had signed him. And it probably is still underrated as an FPL pick, yeah, because people have been getting rid. I went into last week saying you didn't have that. I held Eze because Eze was lower owned, and I said that they weren't close as assets, and they're not. And it could have gone either way. I think it was a bit unlucky with Eze. I didn't see the whole game, but he got five shots, five big chances, or 5 chances created, 5 shots. And then Mbeumo gets a penalty, he gets a retake, which again, thankfully, I didn't see. Very annoying. Although glad he missed out on that extra 2 bonus points. That at least made up for something. That was a little silver lining of a bad week. But Wissa's someone I've still never owned. I've never owned, which is weird. I've never once owned him in FPL, and I've always rated him really high because, as you say, like Brentford are just this incredibly efficient machine whereby they create big chances. They don't deal in small chances. They don't deal in long shots. They don't deal in kind of taking risks. It's like Jason Bourne, isn't it? That's what I think of there, where I'm thinking of oh no, who is it? Yeah, it is. It's like they don't make mistakes. It's like, that's what she says about him, doesn't she? Or anyway, forget film references. Started thinking about the accountant then as well. I don't guess. But anyway, they don't deal with that stuff. They just deal in mechanics and kind of, and shapes. Brentford play in shapes. They're playing triangles and hexagons and whatnot, and then the ball just falls into a position that's a 0.3 or 0.4 XG chance, and it's invariably Mbeumo or Wissa. So, there is a lot of transfer speculation, isn't there, around Wissa? So I think Baker said to me in the chat, is there something going on with his contract, whereby I don't know, has he got some kind of release clause, or is it some kind of contract that's easily, it's easy to tempt him out? It does feel a little bit precarious.
What is it? Isn't it 12 or 18th months left or something like that? But I remember a similar kind of. It does seem to happen with Bournemouth. Brentford players. Like I know Tony had a similar situation. When it was getting down to the different timings, the 18 months left, the 12 months left, there was always a lot of speculation around them. So I don't know whether there is something in that, as you say, meeting certain criteria or being a chance to push a contract offer towards him because he's perhaps at that stage of his career where he's probably got his best chance of a big move is around about now, or he gets a contract rise now. So there's probably something going on in the background like that. But hopefully he does stay because of the pain of seeing him at Spurs would be quite unpleasant personally. But yeah. So I'm sitting here also with 2 Cliver owners, if it's not too much of a spoiler. I think that's right, is it? Yeah, probably. Out of interest, so we can do our little XGI game again. Let's just go for open play. Just because I know Danny will hate this because of course penalties do count, and they are an important part of the game. If you were guessing of the big Bournemouth 3, what order would you go in? Last 4 for XGI.
Me first.
Yeah.
Oh, Jossy wants. I'll say. Well, I would certainly have Dango top. Do you want numbers?
Oh, you can do. Go for it.
So last 4 total XG.
XGI, yeah.
Total XGI. I'd have Dango top, I would think. So I'll say something pretty high with Dango. I'll go high. I'll go like 2.76. I'll go Semenyo second. Probably one of the reasons you're asking me because Clivert's probably bottom. I'll say 1.78, and I'll go Clivert 1.44.
Very good. Just are you into this, or are you just happy to go?
I'll certainly have a go. I would have put them in the same order, to be honest, and I hadn't got as far. I got as far as deciding that Dango probably 2.6, which is close. I was never going to be as precise as Danny, 2.76. Let me give you, I think they're in the same order, 1.6 for Semenyo and 1.4 for Clivert.
Okay, well, I mean, good news then. In which case, as Cliver owners, if we let's just very briefly go for all in with the penalties as well.
Right, because I was going non-pen. Yeah.
Just putting it in context.
Sorry.
So we've got Cliver, if it includes penalties as well, 2.54, Dango 2.01, Semenyo on 1.59. But non-penalty, Dango's out front, 1.74, Cliver 1.09, Semenyo 0.89. So it's a little bit of a drop-off. I think they've had similar amount of shots, by the way, Semenyo and Dango as well. So, but Semenyo often tends to have a high volume, as we probably know. So, I think there's a couple of things here, and they've been pretty efficient, almost Brentford-esque actually in some respects. They've been pretty clinical in front of goal lately, especially that game at Newcastle. Cliver, I think he got all 3 goals from more or less 0.1 each or something like that, wasn't it? It was quite low. But he looks in a staggering vein of form anyway. It's more the chances, the fact that he's confidently letting fly from distance, etc. I know a few pods this week have said, well, managers will spot that and they will stop that and that sort of thing. But, that takes a very particular vein of form. But I am interested in your views, particularly on Dango as well, because he's the man on the screen in just a minute. But Danny, did you want to clarify why you, because you bought in Clivert this week, whereas Jossy was ahead of the curve as per. So why did you pick him up this week? Was it just price rises? Or?
Yeah, I didn't get him at his base price like I'm sure Jossy did. He likes base price.
That luscious base price. Wow,
not quite, but
no, I mean, again, it probably wasn't necessary, and I think it's very reasonable to go Dango instead of Clivert. I think I could end up getting both, and obviously, yeah, I had a position. Money was tight, and I had a position where I've got Enzo dropping like a stone, and obviously Clivert. I could see he was rising on like Saturday, wherever it was, and that means he's probably going to double rise. I think he might rise tonight or tomorrow. And sometimes you just got to make a good call, and there's a lot of boxes to tick for the other guys, but sometimes you just watch Clivert and what he's doing, and he's just completely on it. He's just on another planet at the moment. He's just seeing ones and zeros, isn't he? And he's just so confident. Lethal finisher, penalties. I think people sort of put forward the suggestion that his minutes are probably, or people think objectively, maybe the worst of the 3. But I think there's an element of just also that's not really taken into account of just when you play as well as he's playing, you're not gonna get dropped or you're gonna get more minutes. I mean, I hope he's not typically brought off because he's got some kind of physical thing in the background that you never really know about. Is there some kind of thing where his body's not great for like muscle injuries or something? That's always a worry because some people just they just stick him out there for 90 minutes in every single game. So we haven't really seen that with Kluivert yet. So there's definitely a slight concern there in terms of why. But yeah, he's just sometimes you just watch a guy and every intention is just blind goalwards, shots, assists, like taking over the play, being the main man, not questioning yourself. It's just you can just see no fear in everything that he does. Like you say, so those decisions with that long shot against Newcastle, wherever it was, when he had options out left and right, then he could see that it opened up for him. Bang, bottom corner. So Kluivert's just on it, and I think the question really is for me is whether I get more than one, whether I get Dango as well. Because I do have those two ahead of Semenyo. I think I've just sort of I've owned Semenyo, and it's always a little bit underwhelming. He's a brilliant player. The minutes are good. He's probably a little bit better than actually having him in my head. He could be maybe up there with as one of the best picks. Yeah, that's why I went early. It was just to catch the prize, get him in. I know that I want one next week, so I'll take the guy who's on penalties, who's on great form. Get rid of that Enzo problem. I guess, yeah. I mean, it's not nice only having one piece of the three, is it? With the fixture that they've got coming up, because the chances could fall anywhere. I mean, with Dango, obviously he's properly the number 9 at the moment, and obviously, they might try and sign someone. So that's the caveat here is if they sign a number 9, that's problems for Dango's minutes, or it could be problems for all their minutes because maybe they move Kluivert to the wing or something like that, or Dango to the wing. Maybe it's a problem for Brooks. But anyway, I think if he's on the wing, he's much less appealing because it's a bit like a sort of Beto type. That's a bit harsh because he's better than that. But he's a real big nuisance in that number 9 position, and he just stays there, so he gets all the chances. He doesn't actually strike me as a brilliant finisher from what I've seen so far. He's finished. He had 1 goal disallowed, so he could have even had more. The goal that he scored, I mean, he did that incredible leap, so he showed incredible athleticism for that leap. It wasn't actually the cleanest header in the world. He did direct it well, but it wasn't actually the cleanest header. He just jumped so high, he just dominated. And then the other goal that he got was a little bit fortunate. It was a little bit messy and scuffy, and just sort of, he doesn't look like the greatest striker of a ball, does he? So whereas Kluivert, that's the other thing with Kluivert, he just strikes it so sweetly, doesn't he? You just think it's going to the bottom corner every time he hits it. So yeah, I'm in a position where I think I would rather have Kluivert more than any of the others. But it's an option for me to get Dango as well next week because I don't know. I don't really feel comfortable just picking one.
Yeah, actually, whilst we're on it, by the way, I think it is worth pointing out that Bournemouth fixtures carry on for a fair way. They really. Yeah, they off into the sunset. I mean, right into game week 33, where there might be a potential double, I think, from memory, something like that. And I think the good thing is with them is there's probably a player in each position. Frankly, I like Howson as well. Kepa actually is a decent pickup. If I was buying a goalkeeper next week, for example, I'd probably go there. Actually, I think he would be a very reasonable pick. They don't play Chelsea again. I can't remember the arrangement there in terms of whether I'm assuming he's on loan. But that's no longer an issue. So he's someone that's quite interesting, I think. So having a space for that, 3 good midfielders. Kirkes is good. Yeah. If you flush with cash, perhaps you could have him over House. And so there's a lot of options, and whenever Nilsson's back, maybe that's not bad as well. So it's a tricky one, and actually I'm in an awkward spot with this one because I've managed to squirrel away 0.5 this week through moving early, and I still can't get to Kluivert. It's ridiculous because Enzo dropped twice, I think it was. So he's an absolute nightmare, that guy. So I will have a decision to make, but I'll probably be the other way round to you, Danny. I might have to go Dango first and then Kluivert, but it wouldn't be ideal. I would go in that order. So Menu is a funny one because it's hard to justify the kind of 0.6 over Dango at the moment. But Jossy, if you were picking a second Bournemouth? Or I mean, are you looking at a second Bournemouth, and who would it be?
Yeah. I mean, I've got a plan to take me up to 29 at the moment. And if I lose Bruno for Bumo, I think Gordon will be replaced with Dango as well. Because I do like the idea of the double up. The fixtures are great for a good run, and it really frees up cash to put some money elsewhere.
Lovely stuff. Actually, just very quickly, Danny knows I'm obsessed with players' heights. Would anyone like to guess Dango's height? You said because he leapt like a salmon, as you say, and you said he was a big lump.
Oh,
well, no, you didn't say big lump.
You just out here to correct me here, or what? You know,
I bloody love players' heights. It's one of my favourite things. I might just have to double check this because I looked at it last week and I was well, not surprised, but
6'4".
Deceptively small, is he? He must be deceptively small. So I'm going to say,
is it one or the other?
I don't know what to think now. I'm going to say 5'11" then.
Yeah, Genius Gamer in the chat here has gone for 5'9.5". That's very precise. Someone will have to work it out. He's 1.77. So in my head, that's 5'10". Is that right?
Wow. Yeah,
but I think Genius Gamer is pretty on that. I was surprised. But again, he's got a leap on him and he's quite physical. Yeah. So I wouldn't be worried. There are some players like that, though, aren't there? Who they could be 6 foot tall, but they look small when they're playing up front because they maybe don't have the physical strength. But Django is one of those. He punches more of a punch, really.
Sorry, Rich. I thought you just finished there. Sorry. I was just going to say, I think you have to give it to Genius Gamer then, because it's actually 5'9.68". So he's pretty close with 5'9.5".
Genius Gamer, you are a genius gamer. You are welcome here anytime. In fact, Danny, if there's a free spot on a pub quiz, I mean, obviously pick me before Genius Gamer because I'm a fellow doctor. But yeah. Yeah, anyway, so go for him next on your list as well. We better push on because I know that what we can do here, which is dangerous. I'm not going to go into the fixtures in any great depth, actually. I know we could, but I think we'll leave that now. Are there any other particular games that you want to talk about this week? Because I think there are some interesting dilemmas for people. Like one of mine, for example, if we talk about Nottingham Forest, Brighton, because a few people have got João Pedro still in their starting lineup for this game. Some people were still in Chris Wood. It's just a minor kind of debate, but Milenkovic versus Gabriel, I think is reasonably close because they're both looking really, again, good. Milenkovic is getting a lot of chances still, as you know. Could easily be a reasonable point swing there one way or another. So it's, that's a pretty tricky one. But any thoughts?
Yeah, that's tough. That's probably tougher than me. I've got a choice with Hall and Gabriel. Yeah, I mean, I think Jossy's got Wood as well. But I said this last week. I was worried that Wood, lots of people are selling Wood, and he goes from being fun, joyous Wood who's getting points every game to someone who I now need to get points because I'm holding on to him at the moment, and it's the first game of the bloody week. And I really need Chris Wood to step up in that game. We'll come to teams in a minute in terms of your decision. I mean, United and Palace, even, I'm a United fan, but that is... I want to see where Bruno's playing, because if I get another game of Bruno in the six, that's going to be enough for me to just be like, I'm not dealing with this. It's not just a one-off. I'm not having him in the six. Then that will solidify Dango in next week for Bruno, I think, if he plays there again. Yeah, I mean, how do you boys see the Arsenal City going? That's the big one, because I will be playing Gabriel at the moment, and I just sort of don't drop Gabriel.
Yeah, similar. I'll hand over to Jossy first, sorry.
I was just going to say, I have the exact same debate. I've got Hall, I've got Gabriel. It's been on Gabriel all week, but I am getting tempted. City seem resurgent. Have a feeling that City might get a result there, but Gabriel's always liable to get a goal, and in recent times they've been really tight games, haven't they? So it could still be decided by one goal. It's a really tough call. That.
It's the fear, isn't it? It's the fear with Gabriel because it's irrational sort of thinking, I'm playing a defender against Man City because I think he could get a goal. But he's so aggressive. We know that they do these set piece routines. He scored against City at the start of the season.
Yeah.
City are one of the worst teams in the league for defending set pieces. So we know. I mean, whether he scores or not, I don't know. But there's going to be 3 or 4 occasions where he plows through everyone and.
Yeah.
Either gets his head on the end of something or tries to get his head on the end of something, and that will be pretty terrifying to watch. It's just what you think of someone like Newcastle or Forest. Brighton have just taken a couple of beatings and they won't be very happy about that. And Newcastle also just got battered by Bournemouth. Does that mean they tighten up a little bit? They are at home. They've been very good at home. Fulham, whilst they're a very good team, they're not really sort of massive goal scorers. I mean, Richie knows there's him and his owner who's been missing loads of chances.
Oh,
Iwobi and stuff, and Wilson's just got a big injury, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Thinking about it, actually, Wilson's always someone who can pop up with a goal. I think he's gone now. I just don't think I can bench. I just don't think I can bench Gabriel because, again, although I agree, City could get something and they've looked better going forward. It's still Arsenal defence, and they still could just beat them up. They could get a clean. Oh. It's really tough.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw a few other things in there on these games before we go to our teams. A lot of people are considering playing Greaves this week. Do we like that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
I mean, if you're thin on the ground, maybe, but I wouldn't be overly keen. I just don't see them keeping a clean sheet even at home to Saints, to be honest.
Yeah. It's funny that because one of the reasons you're talking about it is that, like, obviously I talked to Ivan, our friend Ivan, quite a lot. FPL Royser, we were in a group chat and we speak to him pretty much every day. And he's an Ipswich fan, and he talked about Greaves all pre-season about the routines. He's a big £15 million signing, massive guy. All these set piece routines was all about getting the ball to him at the back post, getting these goals, and it was all season. So one of the reasons I started with him start the season was through those conversations, really. And then also, even when I wildcarded, remember 2 Ipswich centre backs, 2 4.0 in wildcard. Anyway, bloody Ivan, he's the first one to text that 4-1. He's like, it finally happened, and I'm like, well, great, really finally happened against fucking Alisson and Trent in the last game.
Great time to walk clean sheet.
Yeah. So I don't know if people are suddenly thinking, Greaves can score goals and he's a goal threat. I mean, he's always been a goal threat, but I don't really like it because Southampton actually, sort of said the same thing going into the Newcastle game. They've not been great, but they can play a bit. They can create chances, can't they? Seem to be able to score goals. So no, don't like it.
One or two other things that pop up actually just in my head before this. I know that people were considering their position on Rodgers. That's another little interesting diversion. A lot of people, I saw tweets last night like, "Oh, I must play Rodgers above Wood this week." So that I'm looking forward to because hopefully that goes wrong for them. So there's that issue. There's also I have to say, Danny, I think looking back half a season, it feels like we missed a bit of a trick not just leaving Vardy in there.
Oh yeah.
Just as that third striker, leave him there ticking along.
Well, I've got him in draft. So you reminded every week I've got him in our draft league, our draft mini league. I've had Vardy all season, and every week I have a draft league, and it's like Vardy 5 points, Vardy 6 points, Vardy 7 points, Vardy 5 points. And I'm like, sometimes I look at my draft and I go, I didn't even know that Vardy actually got a goal or assist until I look at the draft.
To be honest, his goal this week was his first goal since Gameweek 15.
Oh, there you go then. So that was all on this. Well, he must have had a couple of assists.
One assist.
One assist?
Since Gameweek 15.
Okay. So it's a little bit in the memory of the previous bit.
A little bit deceiving.
Yeah. It's probably got more than João Pedro though. Apart from that.
So he's
Pedro got a couple of
7 goals, 4 assists all season, which is not terrible.
It's not bad.
Whilst we're on a very quick diversion to draft, I know that this is probably just interesting for us, but Danny will remember this because we were in the same room together virtually, so to speaking, and I picked up who is it? Hoyland as a third injured striker at the time, and it felt like he's going to be back in a few weeks' time. That'll be a nice move. And I was just looking at his returns the other day. Again, a bit of a guessing game. How many returns do you think he's got since he got back fit, which is about game week 4, 5 maybe?
I should know that. One or two. Must be one.
2 goals, 1 assist. Absolutely brutal. But that's what £70 million gets you. Anyway, we'll go on to teams.
I'll just
sorry,
say
Tom, you were pretty close. Go on, Danny.
No, I just wanted to say really quickly. I just noticed, obviously, that the Villa game is a derby, isn't it? It's a big derby, that late kickoff. Villa against Wolves.
Yeah.
And obviously, Villa have just had they've just had a pretty tiring game. So, yeah, could be tight one that.
Yeah, actually, it'd be a good conversation for us to have next week about just after the transfer window, because obviously it looks like Duran is off, that Watkins is nailed again. It was interesting watching that game last night with so many runs beyond for Rodgers as well, which is quite interesting. But they haven't got great fixtures, have they? So it's quite an interesting debate on wildcard whether you pick one up. I think they do have a double, but not great fixtures. So it'd be an interesting one to look at. Jossy, do you want to talk us through your where are you at here? Have you already made some moves with this team, or just hand it over to
you? I had rolled 2 transfers the previous week. I very rarely managed to roll, but just the 1 transfer this week, which has been used on Flecken to Pickford. So I'm sitting here now, strongly considering that, and whether it's advisable or not, that Bruno's going to go this week for Boomer. Reason being, there's a chance it can pay off this week. I think Boomer could outscore Bruno by 4 points. I'm prepared to take that risk to buy myself a transfer. That means that next week I can maybe replace Pedro with Wissa, or potentially kick Pedro down the road and just double up on the Bournemouth team against Southampton. So that's me. My Liverpool triple up is Salah, Trent, Canate. I am playing the triple captain. I've got that debate at centre back, Hall versus Gabriel, or centre back on the screen at least. And then the Gordon and Isaac. And as you said, hopefully Wood to come good. I was debating Kluivert versus Pedro, but I just don't think I can leave Kluivert on the bench at the moment. Pedro's form is dire. They're away at that solid Forest defence. Obviously, it's Liverpool, but look, I just have more faith that Kluivert's got a chance of doing something than Pedro. What do you think, boys?
Well, yeah, man in form. I can see why you're going that way. Can't argue with you there, Danny.
Yeah, I'd play Kluivert over Pedro as well, so I agree with that. It's just you've got similar dilemma to me. It's just at the moment I've got Gabriel over Hall, and it is close. The models have probably got Hall slightly, but I don't know. Sometimes I have this kind of rules. And it's better not to deviate from them. I think generally in the long, play it over 100 times. It's tough, but I think I'm likely to play Gabriel.
Actually, just there is a kind of question that we had earlier this week, and I'll just throw it out there now because it's about Bruno. The question is, worth getting Bruno this week? Already have Njai, Mikalenko, 3 Liverpool, etc. Already also have 3 free transfers, thinking of taking Sarr out for Bruno.
I wouldn't, for the reasons I've said. We don't know if how long he's going to play number 6. And Palace have been very good defensively. Man United have not been good attacking. Bruno is a good pick. I can understand it. He's got good fixtures. He's got a good fixture in 29. He's got Ipswich at home, I think, in 27. On paper, he's a decent pick. But I think you either wait and roll, or you probably wait, or you go to a Bournemouth guy, or you just go somewhere else. You go to Decore and then you go to a Bournemouth guy next week.
So the man has spoken, and now we're going to come to his team. So you've already, you've done a Mikalenko transfer there already, and there's still some activity to come. Is that fair? Oh, and Kluivert.
Yeah, I had 4 free transfers. did Robinson to Mikalenko, which is tough. Really, it was a bit risky. Really, probably shouldn't have done it. Again, it was a bit of a price thing in terms of what I could afford. But obviously, so we'll have to see how that works out in terms of the double. So, and I brought Kluivert in for Renzo. I've still got 2 free transfers. I've got quite a bit of money in the bank, so I don't know what it is, like 1.4, 1.3. So, if I were to play the Assman, if I were, I've obviously had to consider these things. There's options. I would, if I really wanted to say play it on Liverpool, I would actually probably do Alisson to Pickford to free up slot. But I don't think, obviously, I won't be doing that. I don't think. If I wanted to play it on Moyes, I would have to do something like, because Bumo's going to come in, so I'd have to do something like Fernandes to Bumo instead to have a bit more money. And that would allow me, and then with the other, then I would probably just go straight to Moyes. I don't know, something like that, and then save a transfer. But anyway, I think I've settled on not doing the Assman, regardless of the announcement. I'll just sort of have to hope that Liverpool beat Spurs, and I could go Assman next week. In which case, I'll be all in on the triple captain. I'll probably use my other 2 transfers. I'll go Eze to Bumo, and then probably Pedro to Njai with about 0.1 wriggle room. And then, then I'll go into next week, and at least I've got Kluivert already there as someone who's going to come straight in to the 11 next week. And then next week there's a range of options, as I say. Could be Bruno to Dango, could be Roll. Yeah, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to argue. I think it's all very sensible. You got all the different options worked out. I don't think there's any. Put it this way, I mean, I've got Gabriel and Hall. Sorry, if I had both of those 2, I'd be going the same way. I actually sold Hall, but it's so far worked. It's quite frustrating because you have to lose 0.4 on him. You probably lost about the same sort of amount on Robinson. But I've gained it elsewhere now, so it is the way. It's interesting. There was a manager in the chat who said no serious manager or no good manager would have locked in a kind of their free hit 29 or not strategy at this point. I more or less have, so you can work out. No, but what I mean by that is I'm always definitely not free hitting 29 unless I absolutely have to. It's, I've sold a number of players who would have. Who makes sense for that kind of route. So we shall see.
Same.
Yep. Good. We've already had the conversation about who you'd captain if Mo got injured, but he clearly hasn't. So that sadly no debate there. But Trent on the vice for all of us. Oh no, Isak is you need to sort that out, Jossy.
I know it's a double game week, but I still don't like vicing a player from the same team, because what if I'm not going to say anything.
Beware of fans.
Not again.
Beware of fans.
Yeah.
Beware of the weather. So here's me. I should have done all the reading out, shouldn't I? Mine's a bit smaller, so perhaps I will read it out. Alisson, Trent, Gabriel, Mikalenko, Palmer, Salah, Bruno, Mbuemo, Isak, Wood, and Jai, and then lovely Enzo on the bench, who's guaranteed to score this week. I'm absolutely convinced of it. It's going to happen against my team. Little swine lost 0.3.
It's been a disaster, hasn't
or 2 anyway, but horrible transfer, that one. Probably the worst of the season, certainly amongst them. So probably the only all the transfers are done, gone quite aggressive, quite early this week. Really, it was for funds, and still hasn't worked out tremendously because I still can't afford Kluivert. But I've got 0.8 in the bank now to replace Enzo next week. So I would assume everything being well, I'll pick up likely Dango rather. I keep saying Django. I'm sure everyone else has got that problem as well. He's likely to be the one. So probably the biggest dilemma left, assuming that no announcements happen. So that's the other thing, by the way. The 0.8 is there. So I have the option of the Moyes end of things if I really wanted to as well. But I think it's very unlikely that I'll plump in that direction, to be honest, because it would take it as much as anything else. So the remaining decision is just Milenkovic versus Gabriel, really. that's a bit of a debate, that one, because I think they're both very threatening at set pieces, and obviously on paper, Forest have the better game. But yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts?
It's tough, isn't it? Because Milenkovic, you've benched so many points of his. Understandably, he's had a lot of points on your bench, and has he had two goals disallowed now?
Yeah, maybe more. He's like that though. He does get a lot of on people's shoulders and such. Yeah.
Well, it was Wood's fault last time, wasn't it?
Bloody Wood, eh? Never liked him.
Yeah. I know what a guy. Just to say, by the way, you were saying about reading the teams out. If there is anyone listening, well, my first 11 is exactly the same as Rich's this week. So it's just that I've got Clive on the bench. I think.
All right, yeah. All right, don't show off.
Yeah,
Danny, do you consider Milenkovic closer to replacing Gabriel than Hall, or no?
Personally, yes. Actually,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Only this week. I mean, not there are other weeks. It's just Brighton. You know what? They don't look. I can imagine them not scoring in that game. I can imagine them scoring as well, but.
I can't remember what the clean sheet odds are like, actually, but it might have been interesting.
Yeah, have a look.
I'll have a quick look at review as well while we're talking. But I think it's less of a position for you for the Assman while we're talking about Assman.
Yeah.
So review has Milenkovic 3.0, and so review has Hall quite far ahead of Milenkovic, actually 3.6, 3.0.
It's mine.
But
I can.
But yeah, I think it's closer than that. I think it's close. I just like Gabriel.
I can give you Rob T, but Rob T's got Forest with 27% clean sheet chance, Newcastle with 32%. He's got Arsenal with 29%.
Okay.
But obviously, you've got the goal threat with Gabriel.
Yeah, it's just serious goal threat, isn't it? Obviously, Milenkovic's got goal threat. I think Gabriel's got more goal threat than Milenkovic. Quite considerably more goal threat than anyone, actually, of any defender. It's worth saying that you've got less choice on the Assman, because although you might be able to get to Moyes, you're going to need to be able to change both in 26 and 27, and probably need more money for both the other ones. So yeah, I like it. Just all in on the TC.
Yeah.
I guess we're done. Let me just take that off for all things teams. Anyway, I'm pretty sure we've done the questions that we would have had this week, Danny. So I think we are more or less good to go.
Yeah, I think we only had one. So I'll say also thanks to everyone in the chat. It's nice to have people in the chat listening. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think and hope there are still people there. It's nice. Massively appreciated, and we do appreciate likes and feedback and questions and subscribe. We haven't got many subs. It's nice. All it does is tell you when our next video is. That's all it does. We don't put too much on there. We've only got one a week at the moment. But
still no sponsor. No gluten-free Peronis offering their way. No local pizza chain. No
ball shaver.
No ball shavers. No. Absolutely.
We'll get there.
So if anyone is feeling generous, send anything in. And we don't have anything set up like a Patreon, so maybe just a check. I can give a PO box address next week, and we can do it that way. And we can send Jossy a cut in his neck of the woods as well. Perhaps that's a fair bargain as well. There's one question that I did miss earlier on. Maybe we can sign off with this from our good friend Alex Ball, who's been with us since the early days. Although it's still fairly early. All right, fellas, how's it going? There we are. Benching dilemma for you. Who would you start out of, Cliver or Rodgers?
I would. Oh God, that is tough. That is actually really tough.
Like this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say at first.
Penalties at home. Pitch vein of form. It's a derby game. The other one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's tough.
It's
I
tough.
think I would probably start Clivert. Just because I think Villa could be tired on Saturday. It could be quite a tough game, that derby. But Rodgers has looked a lot better. But I think I'd just go with Clivert.
Cool. Okay. Right. Well, I guess we're there's no traitors sign off tonight, Danny. We're done with all that, and no one cares what our TV recommendations are. In fact, I'm off, but I'm home alone for at least another hour or two this evening. So I've got a Bond film ready to head off to in a few minutes' time. That's how I'm feeling. That kind of Dr. No, if anyone wants to know.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was early days. So yeah. I'll be there with another honey and lemon. That's how cool we are around here. So yeah, but all it is for me to finish off with then is just to thank Jossy for joining us again, because we're keeping him up. He needs to get to bed and to feed his cat and all the rest of it, who has been mercifully quiet this evening. So what's the cat's name?
Ginger.
Lovely stuff. But yeah, thank you for that. So you're obviously treating them well. Good. Well, have a lovely rest of week, and hope both your game weeks go very well. So thank you, and see you again soon. And thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Brilliant.
Boys.
Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.